Have you ever been called a servant at your own daughter's celebration? I was. In front of 200 guests. Under a chandelier that glittered like a crown above people who thought they owned the night. The man who said it was Daniel Cole. The fiancé she swore was her forever. His voice carried across the ballroom in Chicago. Smooth and sharp. He set his hand on my daughter's waist and laughed as he pointed at me. "He's just the help," he said. "Don't worry about him. There is no them." The laughter that followed sliced deeper than any blade I've known. Crystal glasses chimed together. Music kept playing. And I stood frozen. Holding a plate he shoved at me like I belonged in the kitchen instead of at her side. My daughter, Claire, bit her lip until it turned white. She whispered, "Dad, please, don't make a scene." He doesn't mean it. There is no them. But the truth was there in Daniel's eyes. He meant every word. I had raised her alone since her mother passed when Claire was 10. I was there for scraped knees, broken hearts, school concerts in dusty auditoriums. Yet in that moment, every sacrifice I had made was erased by a single cruel sentence. I wanted to speak, to tell the room who I really was, but my voice caught in my throat. Choked by years of silence and restraint. The chandeliers swayed gently above me, mocking the storm inside my chest. I set the plate down on the nearest table. My hand trembled, not from weakness, but from fury. Around me, no one met my eyes. They smiled at Daniel instead. And my daughter clung to him like he was the only shield she had. That was the moment I understood. This night was not just a party. It was a test. A brutal reminder that sometimes the people you love most are blind to the wolves they invite into their lives. I was not always the man people dismiss in cheap suits. My name is Richard Hale. And for most of my life, work was the only language I spoke fluently. I was born in a steel town outside Pittsburgh, where the air smelled of smoke and the streets were cracked. Long before I learned to walk them, my father came home each night with oil on his hands and weariness in his eyes. My mother patched clothes until the fabric turned thin as paper. We had nothing. Yet I grew up knowing I would not stay there forever. When I was 20, I built my first machine in a garage that rattled when trucks passed on the highway. It was nothing more than an automated press that saved a factory a handful of minutes per day. But it changed everything. Patents followed. Investors came later. And by 40, I had founded Hale Systems, a company that designed robotics so precise they were used in surgeries and space missions. Newspapers wrote my name. Forbes listed me. And bankers who once ignored me lined up for handshakes. But money never filled the chair left empty by my wife, Eleanor. She died on an icy road one January evening, leaving me with a 10-year-old girl who cried herself to sleep for weeks. Claire became my reason to keep breathing. I cooked burned pasta, learned how to braid her hair from YouTube videos, and stayed up past midnight helping with science projects I barely understood. When I closed deals with executives in Tokyo or Berlin, I always booked the first flight home because I promised her she would never feel abandoned. As Hale Systems grew into an empire, I built walls around our life. We lived in a brownstone near the lake. Not a mansion. Claire went to public school. Not private academies. I told myself she needed to stay grounded. To know love mattered more than numbers in a bank account. I wanted her to choose people for who they were, not for what they had. Perhaps that was my mistake. By the time she graduated college, I had become a man the world recognized, but she sometimes barely knew. She loved me. I never doubted that. But she wanted freedom from the shadow of my name. I gave it to her, though every inch I stepped back felt like a mile that separated us. She moved to Chicago for work, and I stayed in Boston, visiting when I could, listening to stories about friends, projects, and eventually, Daniel, the The first time she mentioned him. Her voice carried that glow I remembered from childhood. Dad. He's different. He listens. He believes in me. I didn't argue. I only nodded. Though a quiet unease stirred inside me. Years in business had trained me to read people, to sense hunger disguised as charm. Now, standing in the aftermath of being called a servant at her engagement party, I could trace every step that led me here. Every sacrifice. Every sleepless night. Every dream I had poured into Claire's future. And yet, in that glittering room, not one guest knew who I was or what I had built. They only saw a man in an ordinary suit, holding a plate like the hired staff. Perhaps that was what Claire wanted. A father invisible. Ordinary. Harmless. She had asked me before not to scare him away with stories of my company or my wealth. I had agreed, thinking it harmless. But now, I wondered if I had allowed her to step blindly into a world where wolves wore tuxedos and smiled over champagne. I looked out over the city skyline from the balcony that night. The lights of Chicago burning against the black water of the lake. Somewhere in those lights was the life my daughter believed she had chosen. Somewhere in that glow was a man who thought he could erase me with a single cruel joke. I promised myself one thing. I would not let her marry a stranger whose respect depended on what he thought I was worth. The call came the next morning while the lake was still gray, and the city had not decided what kind of day it wanted to be. I was making coffee in a quiet kitchen when my phone buzzed with her name. I let it ring once so I could breathe, then answered and tried to sound rested. Dad. Are you free for a minute? Her voice was bright. It carried that lifted edge I knew from childhood. The tone she used when she had news so big it could not stay inside her ribs. Always. I said. Tell me. We set a date. She rushed the words. June. A garden ceremony by the river. String quartet. Small but elegant. Only people who matter. She laughed nervously. And we want you there at the front. Of course we do. I leaned against the counter and watched steam rise from the kettle. That should have been the happiest sentence I had heard in years. But happiness arrived wrapped in a knot. Tell me about him again. I said. Tell me about his family. She took a breath. Daniel works in private equity. They buy companies. His mother, Vivian, runs an arts foundation. His father, Graham, taught economics, then moved into consulting. They value manners and rules. I listened to the names and titles arrange themselves like furniture. I pictured a son who could step into any space and assume it belonged to him. That sounds impressive. I said. Are you happy? I am, she said. He is ambitious, but he is kind to me. He remembers the tiny things. He brings soup when I am sick. He opens doors, but he does not make me feel small. He says I am brilliant when I doubt my work. I feel safe with him. That matters. Right. It matters. I said. Safety is not a small promise. She kept talking, and the details poured like beads from a broken string. The proposal under maples in Lincoln Park. The ring he chose with her friend. The way he asked for my blessing, even though he had not met me properly. He wants to visit soon, she said. He wants to shake your hand and tell you to your face that he will take care of me. The knot pulled tighter. I was silent long enough that she noticed. You are thinking, she said carefully. I am, I said. I am thinking that weddings are more than flowers and photos. They are families learning how to fit. They are places where respect must be built brick by brick. I want to know that he understands this. He does, she said quickly. He grew up with rules at the dinner table. He thanks waiters by name. He gets up early and runs before sunrise because he says discipline is a kind of love. You would like him if you tried. I wanted to tell her what I had seen on the rooftop. I wanted to say the sentence that had burned in my mouth all night. Instead, I steadied my voice. "Invite me to dinner," I said. "A quiet dinner at their home. No speeches. No music. No crowd. I want to look a man in the eyes while he is not performing." There was a pause that felt like a step to the edge of a cliff. Then she said yes. "Vivian cooks on Sundays," she whispered. "They live in a townhouse near the park. It is warm there. You will see." The kettle clicked off. I poured water and watched it rise in the cup. The window fogged and cleared again, like a breath taken in and let out with care. "Dad," she said more softly. "Listen. I know I pushed you last night. I should have defended you. I was scared it would explode and ruin everything. I am sorry." I closed my eyes and let that apology settle where the hurt had been. I am not a man who hoards apologies. I try to keep my promises. I told her we would start fresh. "Text me the address," I said. "I will bring a bottle of wine and my best manners." She laughed then, and it sounded like the girl who learned to ride a bike on a hot July morning while I ran behind her with a towel tied to the seat. It sounded like a future that might still be saved. After we hung up, I set the phone on the counter and stood very still. The city was waking now. Cars moved along the boulevard. A gull crossed the pale sky above the water and vanished into the light. I could feel the old part of me come alive. The part that had built machines out of scrap and plans out of doubt. I would walk into that house with my eyes open. I would measure every smile and every pause. I would listen for the truth hiding in easy words. I finished my coffee and called my assistant to clear the week. He asked if I wanted the usual car for Sunday. "No," I said. "I will drive myself." I put the cup in the sink and washed it clean. Then I dried it with a towel that had lived in this kitchen for years. Simple things have weight when the heart is noisy. The date was set. The path was set. All that remained was to see who would walk it with honor. The message came late Thursday night. Claire's text glowed on my phone while I sat at my desk reviewing contracts. "Dad, can you do me a favor?" A strange unease gripped me before I opened the thread. "Dinner is set for Sunday," she wrote, "but I need to ask something important. Please don't mention Hale Systems. Don't talk about Forbes. Don't bring up the house on Beacon Hill or the foundation. They don't care about money. They care about humility. Just be simple. Please." I read those lines 3 times. My throat tightened, so this was the request I had feared. The words were polite, but beneath them lay the same plea I had heard when she was younger and ashamed of new shoes that cost too much compared to her friends. "Hide who you are. Pretend we are ordinary. Make it easier for them to accept me." I called her at once. She picked up after the first ring. "Dad, don't be upset. They are good people. They just prefer not to talk about wealth. They live a quiet life. If they see you in a tailored suit or hear your name attached to big numbers, they might think I'm marrying into privilege rather than love." I let silence hang a moment. "You want me to lie?" I asked finally. "Not lie. Just soften. Park the Mercedes. Wear something casual. Don't bring up the past. Let them see you as my father. Not as a headline." Her voice trembled as if she feared I might say no and ruin everything. I could almost picture her twisting the ring around her finger, eyes darting as they had when she was 12 and asked for a dog I knew she couldn't care for. "Claire," I said, "if Daniel truly loves you, he will love every part of you, even the parts that carry my name and my story. He does love me," she said quickly. "But first impressions matter. His mother believes in hard work and modest living. His father tells stories of growing up with little. If they think I come from wealth, they might not welcome me the way I need them to." The irony stung. She wanted them to see her as honest, while building the introduction on deception. My chest ached with a father's conflict. Protect her from disappointment, or protect her from a choice that might change her life forever. I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out an envelope I had set aside months earlier. Addressed only with her name, inside lay a check meant for her wedding. A gift I never mentioned until now. I told her it was hers when she needed it. She gasped, asking what it was for. For the wedding, I said softly. Consider it my blessing. She grew quiet, then whispered thank you. And Dad, please. This means the world to me. I need this dinner to go well. I told her I would come, that I would respect her wishes. But after the call ended, I sat alone in the office, staring at the dark window. My reflection looked back at me older now, lined with years of work, but still the boy from Pittsburgh who had built everything with his own hands. What would Eleanor tell me now? I could almost hear her voice. Character reveals itself when people think no one is watching. I knew what I had to do, not to expose them with anger, but to test them quietly, to see how this family treated a man they believed had nothing to offer. My daughter deserved truth, even if she did not ask for it. I rose from the chair, turned off the lamp, and walked through the silent house. Each step echoed like a promise. On Sunday, they would meet not the founder of a global company, but a father in an ordinary suit, and I would see them clearly, without the fog of pretense. Sunday arrived with a sky the color of pewter and a wind that shook the last leaves from the elms. I woke before dawn and stared at the ceiling until the room grew pale. I lay there and listened to the part of me that wanted to keep the old life and the part that knew I could not. I walked to the closet that held two worlds. On the right were suits cut by a man who knew my shoulders better than I did. On the left hung things that had survived years. A canvas jacket from the plant. A sweater Eleanor once patched at the elbow with thread a shade too light. I touched the patch and felt her hand cross time. The sweater went on the bed. I took off the watch. People used to recognize me at airports. I put it in the drawer next to the letters I still could not throw away. From a small box, I pulled out a plain Timex with a scratched crystal. I set it 5 minutes fast the way my father did. He always said that being early was a kind of respect. The phone was next. The newest model felt like a glass tile. I powered it down and locked it in the safe. An old flip phone lay in the kitchen junk drawer under rubber bands and takeout menus. The hinge squeaked when I opened it. The number still worked. It would send and receive calls. It would not impress anyone. I shaved carefully and left a bit of gray at the jaw. I parted my hair with water and let it fall the way it did, before stylists made it behave. I chose a white shirt with a frayed collar and a navy cardigan with 2 loose buttons. The canvas jacket went over both. Dark jeans, clean but faded. Brown shoes I had resoled twice because I liked the way they remembered my feet. In the garage, the cars waited in a row that always made visitors raise their brows. I walked past them, past the quiet sedan that came with a driver, past the roadster that scared me a little when the highway cleared at midnight. In the back sat a 10-year-old Subaru with a dent in the rear bumper from the day Claire learned to back into a space. I turned the key and the engine answered with a cough and a promise. Before I left, I packed a paper bag with a loaf of bread from the corner bakery and a jar of small batch jam. Nothing with a label that shouted, just something a father would bring to supper. I stood at the counter and wrote a note on a blank card. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to meeting you all. Richard. I emptied my wallet on the dining table and sorted what belonged tonight and what did not. The black cards went back into the drawer. I kept 1 bank card and $47 in worn bills. In the photo slot, I slid a picture of Claire at 12 with braces and a champion ribbon from the county science fair. I wanted to carry a reason, not a status symbol. At the sink, I scrubbed the grease from my nails even though there was none. Old habits return when a man returns to old clothes. I practiced a handshake that was warm, but not firm enough to read as a challenge. I slowed my speech. I reminded myself to listen more than I spoke. Let them show you who they are. Richard, do not rush to show them who you were. In the garage light, I looked at my hands. The wedding band I still wore caught a gray beam and went quiet. I turned it once and let it settle. Whatever happened tonight, I would protect my daughter without breaking her heart in half. When the street was quiet, I drove along the lake and let the city wake around me. I practiced small talk out loud the way I had practiced speeches in boardrooms. Work? Semi-retired. Built machines. Now I help a friend at a community shop on Saturdays. Home? Boston, mostly. But I come to Chicago when Claire needs me. Money? Comfortable enough. Not rich. Not poor. Enough to pay the bills and sleep at night. The truth is a heavy coat. A softer story is lighter, but lets the wind in. I told myself I was choosing the lighter one to keep my daughter warm. Still, when the stoplight turned green, my foot hesitated. I saw Claire at 8 with paper crowns and blunt scissors. She said I was a king. I never wanted the crown. I only wanted to deserve it. I parked 3 blocks from the townhouse and walked the rest of the way so no one would see the plates on the car. The neighborhood was rinsed by rain and smelled of bread. I stopped beside a hardware store window and caught my reflection in a display of rakes and paint trays. The man in the glass looked like somebody's steady neighbor. He did not look like a headline. I checked the time. 10 minutes early. I breathed in and out until my chest softened. Then I turned the paper bag so the card faced up. I wanted the first thing they saw to be thanks. On the steps, I paused. I thought of the rooms I had entered where no one wanted me until they did. I thought of Eleanor in a hospital gown telling me to raise our girl brave. I pressed the bell. Somewhere inside, a chime rang bright and high, like a promise that had not yet decided whether to keep itself. Footsteps came. A shadow moved behind glass. I stood up straight and put a smile on my face that did not beg and did not bow. The door began to open. Whatever waited on the other side, I would meet it as a father, not a name. The door opened to a man who carried himself as though every inch of his townhouse belonged to him, and always would. Graham Cole was tall, broad at the shoulders, with hair brushed back so carefully it looked painted on. He gave me a quick up and down sweep, his lips curving into something polite but practiced. "You must be Richard," he said, though it sounded more like a test than a welcome. I held out my hand. "Thank you for having me." My voice was even, steady. His grip was brief, his palm dry. He motioned me inside without another word. The entry smelled faintly of lemon polish. A grand mirror reflected the staircase, its banister gleaming like it had been wiped 5 minutes earlier. I followed him toward the living room where a woman in pearls arranged cutlery on a coffee table. Vivian Cole looked up, eyes sharp, smile rehearsed. She glanced at the paper bag in my hand, and I caught the flicker amusement or disdain. I couldn't tell. "Bread and jam," I said simply, holding it out. "From a bakery near my place. Thought you might like it." "No." Her smile widened just enough. "How thoughtful," she replied, setting it aside on a chair rather than the table, with the wine bottles and crystal glasses already waiting. Claire appeared from the kitchen, her eyes bright, her face carrying both excitement and tension. She kissed my cheek quickly, then introduced me. "Dad, you've met Graham. This is Vivian. And of course, Daniel's here too." Quote, Daniel stepped forward in a shirt too crisp for a Sunday evening, his cologne arriving before his handshake. He clasped my hand firmly, squeezing just enough to remind me he thought himself strong. "Mr. Hale," he said. "Finally. Claire talks about you all the time." Quote, "Richard," I corrected, giving him a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Good to meet you." Quote, We settled into the living room. Graham in the best chair. Vivian perching gracefully on the sofa. Daniel beside Claire. His arm draped around her like she was a trophy he'd just polished. They offered me the seat with the cushion that sloped downward. The one that made you feel smaller than you were. I sat without complaint. The room was filled with carefully chosen details meant to impress. Books arranged by color on shelves, their spines suspiciously uncreased. A framed print of a painting that looked expensive from a distance, but revealed its reproduction quality up close. A television so large it dominated the wall, still glowing faintly from a paused golf broadcast. "So, Richard," Graham began, adjusting his cuff as if he were speaking at a board meeting. "Claire tells us you're retired now." "It is lugged, that's right," I answered. "Spent years building machines. These days I mostly keep busy. Help out where I can, and it's a great works." Vivian tilted her head, the pearls at her throat catching the light. "Plumbing, wasn't it? Or was it electrical? I can't quite remember. And it's a great works, both at one time or another," I said calmly. "I liked working with my hands. Honest jobs. And it's a great works," Daniel chuckled softly. The kind of laugh that was meant to sound friendly but carried edges. "That must have been tough. Crawling under sinks. Dealing with leaks. Not easy work. And it's a great works, not easy. But steady," I replied. "Steady counts for something." "And they won to good how." The three of them exchanged a glance, quick and telling. I had seen that same glance in boardrooms. A silent agreement about where someone ranked. Claire shifted uneasily. "Dad's always been good with numbers too," she offered. "He taught me how to balance a checkbook when I was 12. And they won to good how," Danielle smirked. "Well, numbers on my side of things are a little more complex than that. Derivatives. Leveraged buyouts. A different language entirely. And I nodded as though he'd explained the secrets of the universe. "Impressive. Sounds like important work." "And Vivian rose gracefully. "Dinner should be ready. Richard, I hope you enjoy roast. It's a family recipe." "And smells wonderful," I said, standing. The dining room was a stage set, complete with mismatched china arranged to look like heirlooms, and wine glasses filled before I even touched my chair. I noticed they'd placed me at the seat with a wobbling leg. I steadied it with my foot, keeping my expression neutral. Throughout the meal, Graham and Vivian spoke of art exhibitions, travel, golf clubs. Daniel described deals in numbers designed to impress, tossing out terms like breadcrumbs to prove his sophistication. Whenever conversation turned toward me, it narrowed into polite dismissal. "Trades work," Graham called it once, with the same tone someone might use for childhood hobbies. Claire tried to bridge the gap, telling stories of our road trips, my late-night project help, the way I'd sat in bleachers through every school play. Her words hung in the air, fragile, and fell each time Daniel redirected the spotlight back to himself. I cut my roast, chewed slowly, and listened. Every smile, every sideways glance, every hint of superiority painted the picture clearer. They believed they had measured me and found me small. But it wasn't me I was testing. It was them. And by dessert, I already knew the results. The sidewalk smelled like rain and hot stone when we stepped outside. The townhouse door closed behind us. Claire held it together until we reached the streetlight. Then she turned on me with eyes that shone too bright. "Why did you do that?" she said. "Why did you come in there like a judge?" I kept my hands in my pockets so they would not tremble. "I did not judge anyone," I said. "I listened. I let them show me who they are." "They were nervous," she said. "You made them nervous." You sit in silence and measure everyone. You think it is fairness. It feels like a trial. He called me the help last night. I said quietly. Tonight he passed me the water like I was a waiter. He wiped his hand after shaking mine. Those are not nerves. Those are tells. Claire looked away toward a taxi sliding past in the rain. He did not mean it like that, she said. Daniel jokes when he is tense. You of all people should understand pressure. I do, I said. Pressure makes some people humble. It makes other people cruel. Tonight I saw which kind he is. She crossed her arms. And what kind of father comes to dinner dressed like he is broke? She said. You parked 3 blocks away so no one would see your plates. You brought bread in a paper bag. You pretended to be small. That is a trick. Not a test. You asked me to come simple. I said. I did what you asked. I did it to see if respect lives here without a title to feed it. You wanted them to fail. She whispered. You wanted proof. No. I said. I wanted truth. I wanted to know if the man who claims to love you can love the parts of you that look like me. She took a step back like the words had weight. Daniel loves me, she said. He shows up. He brings soup when I am sick. He remembers dates. He knows my fears. That is love. Love is also how he speaks when no one he wants to impress is watching. I said. In that room he performed for his parents. And when he performed, he stepped on me to stand taller. Do not do this, she said. Please. Do not make this a war where I have to pick a side. There are no sides. I said. There is only your safety. If you ask me to stand silent while a man trains you to shrink, I cannot. Her voice broke. You only see what proves your fear. You never see what proves my hope. You see a ring and think it is a cage. You see his ambition and think it is hunger. Maybe you want to be the only man I trust. The words hit and left a ringing in my head. I spoke slowly. I want to be the father you can lean on when the ground tilts. I do not want your trust as a trophy. I want your life to be long and kind. She wiped a tear. Then trust me to choose, she said. Trust me to know my own heart. I will always trust your heart. I said, I do not trust his. She looked up at the dark windows of the townhouse. I could see her building a wall. Brick. By careful brick, if you cannot accept him. She said, then stay home. Do not come to the wedding and poison it. This is your wedding. I said, I would rather stand at the back and chew my tongue than hurt you. But I will not bless what feels wrong with silence. Then do not come, she said. Her voice was soft, and that softness cut deeper than any shout. I cannot keep choosing between the man I love and the man who raised me. A car went by with music. The night kept moving as if 2 hearts were not breaking on a wet sidewalk. Claire pressed a kiss to my cheek. It was quick. It was the kind you give a person you may not see for a while. I am going inside, she said. I need to plan my life and not this fight. She turned toward the door. I tried to speak and failed. The key turned. The latch caught. I stood under the streetlight with rain on my jacket and a paper bag of bread getting heavy in my hand. For years I had been the man who fixed what was broken. Machines. Contracts. Plans. Tonight there was nothing to fix. Only a choice to keep loving a daughter who had asked me not to come when she promised forever to a man I could not trust. I walked back to the car because walking was the only thing that made sense. The city hissed and steamed. I put the bag on the seat and stared at it until the window fogged. My phone sat in the cup holder. The old flip that did not light the way forward. I drove without music. I let the tires whisper to the road. I saw us at a summer fair when she was 7. Her hand sticky with cotton candy. Her voice brave on a small stage while she sang a song off-key. I had clapped louder than the whole town. I wondered who would clap for her now if the song changed to a cry. At a red light, I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel and counted my breath to 10, the way Eleanor taught me. Then I went home to a house that knew our stories and kept them safe. I set the bread on the counter. I cleaned the sink that did not need cleaning. It was the kind of night when a man does small tasks to keep from breaking open. In bed, I stared at the ceiling until dawn washed the room pale again. I told the empty air that I would not give up on her. I said it twice, then a third time, so the promise would hold. Somewhere in the city, a clock struck 5. Sunday was over. The real fight had begun. The days after that dinner stretched into silence. Claire stopped answering my calls. Texts came back short, polite, distant. Work filled the hours. But even in boardrooms, I caught myself staring at my phone, waiting for her name to glow. It never did. I tried to bury myself in the routine. Mornings began with coffee no longer shared. Evenings ended with documents I read twice and still couldn't absorb. At night, I walked through the house, touching frames that held our history. Claire's first day of school. A science fair ribbon pinned crookedly. A photo of her and Eleanor on the porch one summer. Both laughing. Both with the same shade of auburn hair that caught the sun. Eleanor had been gone for 15 years. But the echo of her voice still filled these rooms. She believed in mercy more than judgment. She would have told me to wait. To give Claire time. To love her even when she closed the door. I sat at her old piano bench some evenings. Not to play, but to feel the dent her hand had left in the wood. Nights grew heavy. One evening I drove to the lake and parked where Eleanor and I used to sit. Water lapped at the rocks. The city lights trembled in the ripples. I remembered her final words in the hospital. Raise her strong, Richard. Raise her so she never bends for the wrong man. I whispered those words again, like a vow renewed in the dark. The silence from Claire pressed harder when her wedding announcements appeared online. Photos of her in a white dress at a fitting. Smiles with bridesmaids. A caption, "Counting down the days." Her life looked radiant, complete. My absence was the shadow no one saw. I clicked through each image with a hand that shook. Not one photo mentioned me. Not one. I sent flowers. White lilies. Her favorite since childhood. The florist called back the next day. Delivery refused. The note I had written, folded with care, was returned unopened. I tried again. A voicemail each morning. One at noon. Another before bed. Words like pebbles tossed into a well that gave no echo. Claire. It's Dad. Call me when you can. Then, later, I love you. That hasn't changed. Finally, even if you're angry, I will always be here. Always. They would not a me. By the third week, I knew she had blocked me. My number went straight to voicemail. The silence was no longer empty. It was her choice. I drove past the church one evening, just to see. Workers carried in flowers, tables, crates of wine. A banner outside announced a June wedding. Her name stood beside his, in gold letters. I parked across the street and watched until the lights inside went dark. My daughter's future was being built without me. Back home, I opened the safe behind the study painting. Inside were contracts, deeds, the original patent documents that had built everything. Next to them was a box Eleanor had left for Claire. Her wedding veil, her letters, her locket with the photo of us on our first trip. I touched the box but didn't open it. One day Claire would want it. One day. I hoped. Sleep grew thin. I walked the streets at night, passing diners and bars where strangers laughed. I envied them their ease. I envied them not knowing what it was to lose a daughter not to death, but to distance. And yet, Beneath the grief, a decision formed. I could not vanish from her wedding day. Whether she wanted me there or not, I could not let her walk into forever without knowing who stood behind her. Not the man Daniel thought he had measured, but the father who had carried her since birth. I looked out at the city skyline from my window that night. Lights flickered, some steady, some broken. I thought of Claire's face when she was small, her hand curled around mine. I thought of Eleanor's voice. Raise her strong. N.D. I whispered into the quiet house. I'll be there, not as the ghost she wanted to erase, but as the truth she would one day need. The morning of the wedding rose clear and cold. Sunlight struck the lake like glass. I woke before my alarm and lay still while the city pulled itself awake. Today my daughter would say forever, with or without me. I showered and shaved with slow care. No disguise, no soft story. I opened the wardrobe and reached for the suit that fits like a second skin. Charcoal, wool, clean lines, a white shirt that holds a crease the way a soldier holds a vow. The tie was navy silk, simple. The watch Eleanor gave me on our 10th anniversary caught the light and made my chest ache. I slid it on and felt steadier. In the study, I opened the safe and lifted the small cedar box Eleanor left for Claire. The veil lay inside, wrapped in tissue. Beside it, her locket with our first photo. I held the locket until my hands stopped shaking. Then I put both back in the box and tied the ribbon tight so the day could hold. I called my driver and then changed my mind. I wanted to arrive under my own hand. The black sedan waited in the garage like a promise. I checked the fuel. I checked the mirrors. I put the cedar box on the back seat and drove toward the church, with a heart that beat too loud for a quiet street. Chicago in June can be a wedding of its own. Trees bright, sky high, sidewalks full of people carrying flowers and secrets. The church sat near the river with stone steps wide enough for 200 wishes. White ribbons swayed on the railings. Photographers arranged boxes and lenses. A florist carried in one last bundle of peonies. The air smelled like new beginnings and old prayers. A security table had been set at the side door. A young man in a dark suit checked names on a tablet. He looked up as I approached, and his expression slid into the careful blank of someone trained to stop strangers. "Name, please," he said. "Richard Hale," I answered. "Father of the bride." He scrolled. He scrolled again. "I am sorry, sir. Your name is not on the list." My mouth went dry and then set. "There must be a mistake," I said. "I am her father." He kept his voice gentle. "I understand, sir. The list was provided by the couple. I can call the planner if you like." "Do that," I said. "Please?" He made the call and listened and nodded and hung up. His eyes flickered with pity. "I am told to apologize and to keep the entrance clear," he said. He did not step aside. He did not raise his voice. He only did the job he had been told to do. For a moment the steps tilted beneath me. I thought of the nights I taught my girl to stand tall. I thought of the dinners I burned until we learned together. I thought of the time she asked if forever could include the days that hurt. I stepped back from the table and breathed until I could see the street again. Across the way, a familiar face appeared among the vendors. It was the event director from the museum that would host the reception. We had met years earlier when I funded a robotics exhibit for school children. Her name was Mara. She recognized me the way someone recognizes a neighbor in a different coat. "Mr. Hale," she said, surprised. "Are you well?" "I am trying," I said. "I am not on the list." Her eyes changed. "Come with me," she said quietly. We crossed the road and entered the side hall through a door that smelled of old wood and flowers. She handed me a plain guest pass and told a staff member to escort me to the balcony. "You can watch from above," she said. "Leave if it hurts." Stay if it helps. I nodded because words felt fragile. From the balcony, the church looked like a small sea. White aisle runner. Candles in glass. A string quartet warming their hands. Guests filled pews in suits and satin. Vivian and Graham sat near the front with their friends. All navy and pearls, and practiced smiles. Daniel stood at the altar with his best man. Shoulders squared. Jaw tight. He looked like a man who believed the room existed to hold his arrival. Minutes stretched. A hush fell. The doors at the back opened and air moved through the sanctuary as if the building exhaled. Claire appeared on her uncle's arm because I was not there to carry her. She wore a dress of simple lines that made her look like light. The veil was not Eleanor's. It was new and perfect. And it fluttered as she walked. I gripped the railing until my fingers ached. Pride rose like a tide and crashed into sorrow. She drew closer. Eyes forward. Mouth trembling with joy and nerves. When she passed beneath the balcony, I saw the freckles at the bridge of her nose that appear each summer. I whispered a blessing under my breath. Be brave. Be loved. Be safe. The vows began. The words were old and solid. Daniel spoke them with sure cadence. Claire spoke them with a softness that made people lean in. The pastor asked if anyone had just cause to object. The room held its breath. I pressed my tongue against my teeth. I swallowed my protest and let the moment pass because this was her day. Not my stage. Rings were exchanged. A cheer rose when the kiss landed. The quartet burst into a bright piece that made the candles shake. Guests stood and clapped. I stayed in the shadows and watched my daughter turn and walk down the aisle toward a future I could not steer. She did not look up. Perhaps it was better she did not see me yet. Mara touched my sleeve. The reception team is staging at the conservatory, she said. Lakeview Conservatory with the glass roof. I can arrange a service entrance if you want to go ahead. You can wait in the East Gallery. From there you will have a view when the couple enters. Thank you, I said. For kindness. For a place to stand. She gave me directions and a badge. Outside I sat in the car and rested my forehead on the wheel until the rush in my ears faded. Then I lifted the cedar box from the back seat and placed it beside me. I would bring the veil to her later if she let me. I would tell her about the locket. I would tell her about the way her mother laughed at the rain and called it free music. The conservatory rose like a ship of glass at the edge of the park. Inside, ferns arched and lights hung like small moons. Staff moved like water. I showed the badge and was guided along a narrow passage that smelled of orchids and metal. The East Gallery was cool and green. From there, I could see the entrance doors and the sweep of tables set with candles in low bowls. A cake stood like a white tower at the far end. The band tested a piano line and let it drift. I stood alone with the box in my hands and the weight of all the quiet words I needed to say. I had come as myself. No disguise. No apology for being the man my work had made me. If there would be a reckoning, it would happen under this roof of glass. I did not want spectacle. I wanted truth in the open. The first buses pulled up. Guests spilled into the foyer in a bright tide. Laughter rose. Glass clinked. I saw Vivian and Graham greet donors and friends with the relief of people who believed the day had gone exactly as planned. Then the doors opened wider and a cheer went up for the couple. Claire stepped into the light, hand in hand with the man who had called me the help. She looked happy and terrified at once. She looked like my girl the day she biked without training wheels and did not know whether to stop or fly. I held the box to my chest and waited for the moment that would choose me. The first applause rolled through the glass hall like warm thunder. People lifted their phones. The band slid into a bright march. A planner hurried past me with a headset and a smile that did not reach her eyes. I stood still and let the tide move. Claire and Daniel paused beneath the arch of lights while guests cheered. He kissed her hand for the cameras. She looked up at the ceiling, at the small moons wired to the rigging, and for a heartbeat I saw doubt cross her face like a cloud over sun. They began the slow walk through the aisle of tables. Hands reached. Congratulations rose and stacked upon themselves. Vivian and Graham waited near the center and gathered them into staged embraces. I held the cedar box close and stayed where I could be seen by chance. Not by force. I wanted her to find me. I prayed she would not have to. A server brushed my sleeve and apologized. The East Gallery had become the place where the overflow of joy met the quiet. I stepped forward 3 paces. That was all it took. Daniel saw me first. His smile tightened, then vanished. The hand that held Claire's arm did not slacken. He leaned toward the planner, whispered, and pointed. The planner nodded. Already moving. Security in narrow earpieces appeared from nowhere as if called up by a spell. I raised my hands. Empty. Calm. I showed the badge Mara had given me. The guard's eyes softened a fraction, but his duty did not. Sir, please wait here. The couple has requested privacy. The couple. My daughter rapped in 2 syllables that shut me out. My mouth was dry. I swallowed it quiet. Across the hall, someone exclaimed my name. It came from a corner table where a man with gray hair stood, blinking as if he had found a photograph walking. He was Dr. Lin, a surgeon who once wrote to me about the precision arm our team built, the one that saved a child when human hands would have trembled. He pointed, astonished, then turned his tablet so the nearest guests could see a profile picture pulled from an article. Whisper followed whisper. Faces turned as if a wind had shifted. Daniel registered the murmur and made a decision in front of everyone. He steered Claire toward me. Not smiling now. Not afraid either. Performance is a second language for men who rise through rooms. He stopped 2 steps away. His voice pitched just loud enough to carry to the nearest tables. Sir, this area is for family and staff. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you cannot be here. Claire flinched, then composed herself. She looked at me as if she could hold 2 truths at once and not break. Dad, she said softly. Her voice hung there, a bridge that might yet hold. Before I could answer, Vivian reached us with Graham 2 steps behind. Vivian's smile had become a warning. Richard, she said, we were told you chose not to attend. It would be best if you let tonight proceed without scenes. Her gaze flicked to the box in my arms as if it were a weapon. I took a breath that felt like glass, and spoke so my words would not cut when they landed. I brought something that belongs to my daughter. From her mother. I held the box out to Claire. Her fingers touched the ribbon. She knew it at once. She had seen that ribbon in the back of a closet when she was 15, and I said not yet. Her face changed. The room fell a notch quieter without quite knowing why. Daniel stepped in, palm raised. A gesture of authority learned from men like Graham. Security. Please escort this gentleman to the lobby. This is inappropriate. He looked at me with the same eyes he'd used on the rooftop when he handed me a glass and a command. That was when Dr. Lin arrived at my shoulder. Breathless. Glowing with the relief of recognition. Forgive me, he said into the air. But this man is not a gentleman wandering the wrong room. This is Richard Hale. His machines help my colleagues keep children alive. He turned his tablet outward, and the halo of glass mooned my face back at me. A few guests gasped. Not at money, but at the story attached to it. I did not move. I did not want victory. I wanted my daughter to see me without fog. Another voice rose from the far table. An older woman in a navy dress who chaired scholarships at a university. She said my name like she was reading it from the wall where donors live in bronze. The band trailed off without being told. Someone lowered the lights a shade as if the hall itself wanted to hear. Daniel laughed. not with joy. It was the sharp laugh of a man who feels the floor tilt and blames the carpenter. "You see," he said to the nearest circle. "This is exactly what I meant. People like this show up and believe rules do not apply. Fame makes them think doors swing without invitation." He placed himself between me and Claire so smoothly it felt choreographed. Mara appeared beside the guard. Her hand hovered near his sleeve. She looked at Claire, not at me. "Would you like him to stay?" she asked gently. It was a small sentence. It carried the full weight of who owned this night. Claire's fingers tightened on the ribbon. Her eyes filled and cleared and filled again. I saw the girl who learned to ride and refused to look back because she knew I was running behind her. I saw the woman who had asked me to hide my name so strangers would not feel small. She turned to Daniel with a face stripped of ceremony. "Did you keep my father off the list?" she asked. Daniel did not answer fast enough. Silence answered for him. Vivian inhaled to speak and thought better of it. Graham studied the floor. The guard shifted his weight. The gallery of leaves and light waited. "I did not come to declare or to defeat," I said. My voice was steady and low. "I came to give you this, and to see you promise your life while remembering you came from one too. I am not a headline tonight. I am only the man who carried you when the snow was high and the car would not start. If you want me gone, I will go now and bless you from the street." Claire's mouth trembled. She lifted the lid an inch. The veil's tissue whispered. The locket winked like a tiny heart. A tear fell and struck the cedar. She looked up at me and then past me to the faces waiting to be told what to think. She found Daniel's eyes and searched them for humility. She did not find it. The room held its breath. Dr. Lin, still at my side, lowered his tablet. No one spoke. Even the ferns seemed to listen. Claire took one step toward me. Daniel's hand closed on her wrist. Gentle but claiming. That small pressure was the loudest thing in the world. Something inside her settled. She pulled her hand free with emotion so quiet it sounded like the first note of a song. "Dad," she said, "please stay." She turned to the guard. "He is my family." The word rang clean and simple. A bell struck once. Daniel's jaw worked. Vivian's smile cracked. Graham's shoulders sagged a fraction. The band waited with instruments lifted but silent. Phones hovered. Recording not scandal, but a heart making a choice. I felt the floor steady under my shoes. I did not step forward yet. I gave her the space to claim what was hers to claim. The reveal had come, not with trumpets, but with a ribbon and a name spoken without apology. Whatever came next would belong to the truth. The glass ceiling above us glowed with city lights. But the room itself had gone still. Every guest watched, breaths caught, waiting to see which way the weight would fall. Claire stood between me and Daniel, the cedar box in her hands, her knuckles white against the ribbon. Daniel tried to recover, raising his voice with a calm he didn't own. "This is a wedding, not a board meeting," he said. "We don't need grand gestures or interruptions. Richard, you've made your point. For Claire's sake, let's not make a spectacle." Quote, but the spectacle had already arrived. It lived in every screen lifted to record, in every whisper rippling through silk and tuxedo, in the truth pressing down like a hand on the room. Claire turned slowly toward him. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "Did you keep my father off the list?" His jaw clenched. "I didn't want distractions," he said finally. "This day is about us, Claire. About building the right image for our life. I was protecting you." "They showed, protecting me from my own father?" she asked, her eyes wet. Vivian rushed in, pearls trembling at her throat. "Darling, you must understand. Appearances matter. Guests talk. Investors talk. We couldn't risk confusion about backgrounds. That, Graham muttered. It was for the best. Families must blend without friction. That, the words landed like stones. Claire looked from one face to another and saw not family. Not protection, but calculation. She lifted the veil inside the box, held it against her chest, and whispered, "This was my mother's. You tried to keep the man who gave it to her from walking me down the aisle. Would it knack you?" Daniel's calm broke. His voice cracked sharp. "If I had known who he really was, I would have welcomed him. Do you think I would have treated him this way if I'd known the truth?" The hall gasped. His words rang louder than he meant. I felt them cut across the silence and slice open his mask. I stepped forward once. My voice was steady, low, carrying more than volume ever could. "And that is your answer. Respect offered only when you think it buys you something is not respect. It is hunger. Ague." Daniel's face drained. He looked at me, then at the crowd that had begun to shift away from him. Phones recorded his unraveling. His hands shook as he tried to reach for Claire. "Please, you have to believe me. I love you. I made a mistake." To our enigmatic, Claire pulled back. "Love doesn't hide my father. Love doesn't erase him." To our enigmatic, Vivian whispered fiercely, "Claire, think of your future. Think of the doors Daniel opens." To our enigmatic, Claire turned to her with fire I had not seen since she was a child, demanding fairness in a playground game. "I don't want doors if the price is pretending my father doesn't exist." To Ark, the crowd stirred, some nodding, some murmuring assent. Even the band leader lowered his bow, eyes bright, as if witnessing more than drama, something human and raw. Daniel fell to his knees, voice shaking. If I'd known he was Richard Hale, I would have bowed at his feet. "Please, forgive me. Let's forget this. Have one know that have winen." I looked down at him, then back to Claire. My words were for her, not him. The test was never about wealth. It was about character. Tonight he showed you his. Now you decide if that's the life you want. Hell's lead. She pressed the locket into her palm and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were clear. "Stand up," she said to Daniel. "Not because I forgive you, but because I need to see you without the act." Hell's lead. He rose, shaking, stripped of charm. The silence around him was worse than booze. It was the silence of people who had seen the truth and turned away. Claire stepped toward me. "Dad," she whispered, voice breaking, "I'm sorry. I should have trusted you." And I opened my arms, and she fell against me. The cedar box between us. The veil crumpled, but safe. I held her while she cried, while the crowd exhaled, while the truth settled like dust in sunlight. I kissed her hair and spoke so only she could hear. "Love is yours to choose, but never let it cost you who you are." And when she pulled back, her eyes were red, but her spine was straight. She faced the guests, faced Daniel, faced the family that had tried to erase me. "This is my father," she said. "He stays." I waited. Applause rose. Not loud, not wild, but steady. A human rhythm stronger than any march the band could play. Daniel stepped back, pale. Vivian and Graham looked down, their kingdom of appearances crumbling. Claire stayed by my side, her hand on mine, her future unwritten but her choice her own. The applause softened. The band found a gentle waltz. I stood with the cedar box while Claire wiped her face. She reached for me, and I opened the lid. The veil waited like a saved breath. I held up the locket. The small photo showed a young couple on a porch with afternoon sun in their hair. Claire touched it with her fingertip. "Will you put it on me?" she whispered. My hands were not steady, so I let memory steady them. I fastened the chain and felt it settle where her pulse beat. She pressed her palm over it and looked at me the way a little girl looks through rain on glass. For a moment, the noise of the hall faded, and there was only my daughter and the echo of the woman we missed. Thank you, she said. She lifted the veil, not to wear, but to hold. She tucked the box into the crook of her arm and closed her fingers on the ribbon. Daniel stood a few steps away. He had not left. Guests watched to see if the night would break or mend. I turned to him. I kept each word plain. I will not tear your marriage apart in public. I said, that is not love. But hear me. Respect is not a costume. It is a habit. If you want peace with me, start there. He swallowed. I was wrong, he said. I cannot undo it. I can only promise you will not see that side of me again. Promises are easy at a microphone. I said, make yours in the quiet. He nodded and stepped back. Around us the circle loosened. Mara, the coordinator, touched my sleeve as she passed. Her smile was small and real, the kind shared when a storm bends a roof but does not break it. The band leader asked if the bride would share a first dance with her father. The music began. A simple melody Eleanor used to hum while she folded laundry. I took my daughter's hand. We moved slowly. We counted the way we had counted when she stood on my shoes at 5. My hand found the small of her back. Her cheek touched my shoulder. The glass roof held the sky. I am sorry, she whispered. I broke your heart and told myself it was necessary. Hearts break. I said, that is how light gets in, but my job is to keep you safe, even from charm that feels like safety. She laughed through tears. You sound like Mom. She did not like when I did, I said, and felt her smile. The locket kissed the silk at her throat. A few people wiped their faces. The song ended. Musicians breathed out as if they had been holding notes too long. Candles steadied. The hall remembered how to be a place for joy and not a court. The room clapped, not for spectacle, but because they had watched a bridge repaired. I kissed Claire's forehead. I had said what mattered to the only person who needed to hear it. Dinner resumed. I sat near the plants. A server set a roll by my plate with a quiet nod. Daniel approached without cameras. I do not expect forgiveness, he said. I only ask for a chance to learn. You are not my student, I said. Learn from her. When you want to perform, remember her face. When you used my name like a lock, then choose the other door. He nodded once and went back to his wife. Near the end, Claire asked for the microphone. She did not hide the red rim around her eyes. Thank you for celebrating with us, she said. Thank you for patience when the evening asked for it. My father raised me to be brave and kind. Tonight I choose both. I will be a wife. I will also be a daughter. Those truths will live in the same house. Applause rose. I looked up through the glass at a slice of sky and pictured Eleanor's smile. I told her our girl had found her footing. Later, Claire brought me a plate with a corner of cake and 2 forks. We sat on a bench under a palm. She laid the veil across her lap. Not tonight, she said, but one day, when I have a daughter, I will tell her whose hands held this. Tell her her grandmother loved rain and burned toast. I said, tell her her grandfather folded towels wrong until he learned. Tell her the people who love her will show up even when the door is closed. I will, she said. Guests drifted away. Daniel came to say they were leaving. He thanked me for staying. He did not try a speech. He simply placed a hand to his chest as if to promise himself first. I answered with a nod. Outside, the air was cool. Claire hugged me at the car. The locket glinted in the streetlight. She pressed her forehead to mine the way she did when she was small. Be safe, Dad. She said. Stay close. Always. I said. She stepped back. He opened the door and waited. It was the first thing he had done all night that felt quiet and right. They drove away and their taillights blurred through a thin rain. Free music. I heard Eleanor say. And I laughed once. Low. Then I started the engine and let the wipers sweep a clean path home. When I reached the house, I carried the empty box to the piano and set it there. I sat on the bench and placed my hands on the cool keys. I did not press down. I only listened to the silence and felt it change. It was no longer the silence of doors closed. It was the silence of a room aired after a long winter. I told the night what fathers tell their hearts when they can finally sleep. She is safe. She is loved. She is brave.